So here we are at Besenyei Eszter in the 13th district, and I'm here together with the candidate for LMP in the elections a week on Sunday. And LMP, for those of you who don't know, is Lehetmás Politika, isn't it? Yeah? Which means like politics can be different in some way. And if we were doing a project, just imagine, because Eszter was one of my students. Eszter was one of my students 12 years ago at Sobolurins Gymnasium. We did lots of things in the class, but if we were there now and we were with a group of 15-year-olds and we wanted to do a little project on raising awareness of green, yes Ronan, raising issues of green, things green, what kind of thing do you think would be a good thing to do in school?
I think the first thing I would do is to actually ask the students what they think green issues are, what green means to them when they think about green things. What is it apart from trees and bushes, I would say, and nature? That's very important, of course, but there are other issues as well that could be considered green. And it would be good to start off with actually the question of what green means to them. And well, if you take it further on, I would concentrate on not just the green parts of the city, but also how it is in connection with transport, because transport is a cardinal part of everyday life. How you get to work, how you get to school, what do you use, how cars and cyclists interact, for instance, or if you take a very busy part of the city and if you take an intersection, how many people use what can you see, what can you find, and that would be a good start.
So if you gave them if you asked them, I mean, some people call it homework, I don't know how long it'll be called homework for, but if you call it, if you gave them a task to do, you know, for the next lesson, yeah, what could they do if they go out in Budapest?
If we take the example from my ex-school, then that used to be close to Moszkva tér, or Széll-Kálmán tér as it is called today. And I think most of my classmates, and I also had to go through that square. Hi, Ronan. and I would ask them to, for instance, stand there and just see what's happening there in terms of transport and green places and green spaces, how you can make a city greener. Also, if you want to put actually trees, where would you put them? Where they could help, for instance, the air and yeah, just see the whole of the square.
And could you ask them to interview people, to do one or two little mini interviews with people?
I think it would be fine. Yeah, I don't think that it would be a problem to just ask one or two questions straight away about yeah, just anything, whether they would how they would make it greener, how the people think about the square.
And then you could talk about it in class, in English, yeah?
I think so.
When you came back, yeah. And what do you remember, Eszter, of our classes 12 years ago?
Well, I remember that we had a book.
Yes, Ronan, we're getting on the boat in a minute, Ronan.
Well, I remember that we had a book that we barely ever used. And whenever we used the course book, that were the most boring parts of the class, and you always kept it very recent. We always talked about what happened that day, that week, the day before in the world and in politics, which was particularly interesting for me.
Can you remember any examples of what we did? Yeah.
Yeah. For instance, before you brought the poppies to the classroom, I didn't know what they were. I really have never heard about them, and I know what a big deal it is in England to wear the poppies, to buy the poppies, to support the troops and all that. I've never heard about it. I just didn't before. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And for people interested in finding out about the election in your area, what website would they go to, or what would they look at? Yeah?
Well, the easiest is to go to választás.hu, because that's where you see all the information. But I would say that it's generally really boring to go to that site, and there is just a lot of dry information. So the easiest is to go in the street and see what kind of posters you see at first. I would say to get acquainted with the faces and with the names, and look them up. That's the easiest. And of course Facebook. I mean, many parties use Facebook. Many politicians have their own personalized Facebook website, and Twitter is not used that much in Hungary, so I wouldn't advise that to look at.
And you worked a little bit for the Green Party when you lived in Brighton, and,
yes,
and with Caroline Lucas, who's
yes.
the only Green Member of Parliament in Britain. What did you learn from being involved with the Greens in Brighton?
Well, I learned how people don't know anything about politics in general, because I used to reply to phone calls and emails sometimes, but mostly I would pick up the phone, and the kind of issues that they don't even know what constituency they belong to. It was very sad that people are detached from politics. That was quite interesting.
And how do you think here in Budapest we can get young people interested in politics in a way that's not boring and a way that engages them?
I would say that there is a difference between party politics and politics. So in politics, I would say youngsters are in general interested in politics. They're not interested in party politics. And if you start with the explanation of the difference between the two, then they understand that those are two different things, and then they can start understanding that it's not a bad thing, that it's not something dirty, that it's not about stealing money and all those cliches that you hear or think about first.
Right. And your name is, if anyone's interested?
Eszter, Besenyei.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Esther, and good luck in the election. I should be looking out for how many votes you get, yeah, and hope you get elected.
Thank you.